Hey all, welcome back to the channel, Fully Invested Fi. We're going to go over another portfolio update this week. So yeah, we'll just be going over the performance over the last week, any of the weekly dividends that have come in, and yeah, just kind of see where we're at for the end of September here. That's coming up really fast. Crazy that we're almost in October. Before we get started, as usual, I'll just kind of give a little recap of strategy on this channel. So yeah, what's unique on this channel is that I invest 100% of my paycheck, and I also fully live out of my Robinhood brokerage account. So practically what that means is that my paycheck direct deposits to my Robinhood spending account. I transfer that full amount to my Robinhood brokerage. So that's about 10.8K. And then that basically gets split into two buckets. One 4K bucket on the growth side, which invests in growth ETFs, stocks, and things like that. And that just kind of keeps dripping and compounding on itself. And that's kind of like what's giving the capital appreciation of the portfolio. And more than half my portfolio actually sits in growth. And then goes also into the high yield bucket, which 6.8K goes towards every month. And that just basically invests into high yield ETFs, such as like XPay, YMAX, ULTY, things like that. And that gives me roughly a 50 to 60% blended yield. And that's basically producing a snowballing like monthly dividend. That's growing anywhere between 200 to 300 a month. And that all just stays in the account. That pays like any dividends I get deposited there. That doesn't drip. It just pays down the margin balance just to kind of keep things like relatively in check because the thing I'm doing from this core thing is that like all the assets in that account never come out of the account. They basically just keep growing and compounding on themselves, both on the growth side and the income side. And what I do is that I borrow against the value of those assets on margin, a 5% interest rate, which is really cheap, cheaper than my mortgage. That's at 5.95. And that's what pays for my expenses every month. So really net after expenses and dividends, like that's the amount that gets drawn on margin essentially. So yeah, like say my expenses are roughly $9,000 a month, and then I get like 4.9K of dividends. Really what gets drawn on margin is 4.1K at the end of the month, right? So yeah, that's what pays my bills and monthly expenses. And then the idea here is to rinse and repeat this until I hopefully reach 5 by 40. That's my aggressive goal that I have for myself. So pushing hard on that, and this is what I'm doing on the channel. So as far as the usual disclaimer, of course, none of this is financial advice, purely for entertainment purposes only. Like I don't even want to call this education in that way. It's there for you to follow along, see whether this works for me or not. And yeah, absolutely. If you're ever considering this kind of stuff, do your own research. It's a very high risk strategy that I'm running given the margin. So yeah, let's get into the portfolio update. So let's pop over to my investment sheet over here. So yeah, it was definitely a bit of a choppy week, at least for my portfolio. Where we ended up the week is slightly lower than we were last week. So the market value for my total portfolio is actually 261K over here. If you factor out the margin, I'm actually down to 130.7K. We check over here as far as the total returns here. Actually doing pretty good as far as like the high yield stuff. This is all mostly in the green. The only thing that's in the red here is MSTY at minus 5%. That's factoring like all dividends that have been paid and such. So if we look at the normal unrealized gain loss, then this is all in the red. But if you factor in the dividends, you can kind of see here that like XPay, this has like a bunch of history, but this is up 33%. NVIDIA is up 17%. ULTY's up 9.5%. YMAX is up 13%. ULTY is up 1%, 1.1. BTCI is up 29%, factoring in total returns. And then, yeah, obviously this is like all very different and in the red here. So, but yeah, like I said in my previous videos, this is what I'm constantly looking at and kind of keeping motivated to like how things are going. As long as this kind of stays mostly in the green, I think I'll be happy with the high yield stuff, as long as it just keeps pushing out that income rate. And yeah, if we look at like the margin health of stuff here, my margin maintenance currently is like 66,000. So basically this value here, 130K, would have to drop down to 66,000 before I even like trigger a margin call. So that's like a 49% buffer here, you can kind of see. 49% if you go off this value, but 24.6% if you go off the full portfolio value, right? Because that's the amplified. So this kind of roughly like almost half this, right? So if this 261K value goes down 24%, that's basically the equivalent of the net value going down 49% is where I'm getting at there. So yeah, but yeah, overall, definitely a healthy margin buffer here of 64K. So it would take quite a bit. Like, yeah, it would have to be some crazy flash crash of a day for 25% to evaporate in a day. So yeah, with that, like I have 130K of margin being used currently. Technically I could go up to all the way to 163K of margin, and even that, like if I did add that, like that would still give, I'd still have like 34K of buffer. But as I've said in other videos as well too, like I can do that, but I don't want to. I want to keep that buffer healthy. I want to keep my cash available for withdrawal healthy and my buying power healthy, just because I am drawing money out of the portfolio. So I need to have this cushion here to gradually go down, right? So yeah, that's as far as the actual margin. So the equity is actually 50% exactly right now. So basically I have as much margin as my account value essentially. And then that's basically, I'm paying $540 a month for on that interest rate on that margin. So what's nice is that, yeah, I'm paying $540 monthly, but I'm also getting 5.1K in dividends every month from that high yield. So as far as the arbitrage here, it's like really amazing. So yeah, I'm making roughly a 52% yield. Change the yield because it's not actually return. So yeah, and then one thing that I changed this week as well is I changed how I calculate this. So I was talking about in previous videos how this is calculated as like the average of year to date of what all the dividends are for these particular funds. But I had the thought today, and I recalculated it, where I can recalculate all these dividend values essentially to be the medians instead of the average. Because like the average is like you kind of get influenced by the extremes, and the median basically makes it so that like you kind of put all the numbers together and then you take the middle value essentially. So I think I like that number a bit better because it's, so the average was feeling a bit high and maybe a bit too ambitious. The median feels a bit more closer to like what I'm actually been making for the last little bit. So I think I'm going to stick with the median for this and maybe actually start sticking to this number as far as like what actually goes on the thumbnails. Just because like the snowball stuff I've been using is like maybe a little bit too under big, given that it just takes the lowest values and that's it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. I think that might be a better calculation, but let me know in the comments if maybe you have a better thought there of how I should calculate this value. Because this is of course an estimate, but yeah. All right, to get back on track here. So yeah, as far as overall performance this week, to be fully upfront, so today was actually a good day because the dividends came in, so I was up 1.83%. And then VU was up 0.58. But if we look at over the week, I'm actually down 1.47%. If you remember, I was like at like 132 or 133 something last week. So VU was actually up 0.35%. Can't beat them all every week. Over the month, I'm up 4%. VU is up 2.83%. So that's where I start beating it. And then I'm up 12.6% on the 3-month chart, and VU is up 8.7%. So yeah, you can kind of see how I'm still working good in the month and 3-month charts, which is nice. And then as far as like the actual dividends that I received this week, so let's pop over to Snowball Analytics here, which I always love. You can kind of see my total profit here. That includes like capital gains, dividends received, minus fees as well too. And yeah, we can pop over to the calendar here. So yeah, so this is what I meant as far as like this number being a lot lower than this one, right? So because like how Snowball calculates stuff is that it basically takes that day's distribution and projects it out. So this week, yeah, the YMAX dividend was actually a lot lower than normal. So yeah, it was like in the 30% instead of like 50, 60. So yeah, these are all the dividends received today. So for a total of 1.27K, had $204 from BTCI. $698 from MSTY. QQQM had $30. So these two deposit into the margin and pays that down. QQQM drips and reinvests into itself. ULTY $203. That again pays down margin, and YMAX as well, $128. So good week overall between all of those funds. And yeah, like I said, QQQM drips on itself because that's on the growth side. So like if we pop over to how stuff is split up, right? So I kind of like split them up between like a core and satellite approach. So I have some anchors on the growth side, and then also some anchors on the high yield side, and then some more individual stocks as well. So it's kind of split up that way. So my growth anchors, for example, are VU, SEHD, QQQM. And the anchor stocks are Apple, Microsoft, Google, Hood, Reddit, Costco. So those are just kind of my single stock plays there. The biggest ones being Microsoft and Apple. Those are probably the stocks that I've had the longest. My high yield anchors, I consider YMAX, XPay, and ULTY. And for my high yield, there's NVIDIA, MSTY, HUI, BTCI. So yeah, you can kind of see the difference there. The percentages between each. Yeah, at the end of the day, I have a lot more in growth over here, 144K, and then also 117K on income. So I try to kind of keep this like under or roughly close to the margin. Right now it's a little bit under, but yeah, this is why I'm not so worried about also the NAV erosion, things like that, because I have my growth engine under the portfolio there, and this is providing my capital appreciation as like the income erodes, but also pays out. So as long as this keeps paying out income, I'm happy. And yeah, as far as the future dividends that we're looking at, so like next week, there's the SEHD payout that's happening, which will be nice. And that's also going to drip on itself, like I mentioned, because that's on the growth side or dividend growth side. Have a little one from VU coming in, and then just it'll be a little from ULTY and YMAX. So look forward to that next week. And also, so given that it'll be payday on the 30th, I'll also have my usual full paycheck investing series. So you'll see me invest my full paycheck and then also pay bills out of my account. So you'll practically see how like this chart really works out in practice, which will be nice to see. And yeah, you can kind of catch up on that series in my playlist as well. Yeah, that's as far as the updates there. If we pop over to Monarch, you can kind of see how we're doing month to date here. So yeah, Monarch is what I use to budget all my stuff and calculate all my gains, my income coming in, my expenses. You can kind of see everything there. I obsessively track everything, and then I kind of split them up by like guilt-free travel, fixed cost, guilt-free spending. If we pop back to categories, can go back to taxable here, can kind of see the progress here. So since I started the strategy in May, you can kind of see stuff kind of slowly creeping up as far as like the monthly income, which is nice. And obviously it varies a bunch month to month, but kind of see that slow trend up. So at the end of September, hopefully I'll be at 4.6K. So we'll see next week how that ends up panning out. And yeah, the one thing to keep in mind too, so given that I just came back from Japan as well, yeah, I have obviously a lot of trip costs that came in. And there was a bunch of costs like before the trip as far as like the engagement ring, hotel, airfare, all that stuff. Yeah, that's all going to be coming on the credit card, and then also I'll be paying that off. So I'll be running a bit higher in terms of like expenses in September and October. So margin will be ticking slightly up this week, these 2 months. And so as a result too, what I'm kind of doing there is I had my HELOC payments that I was paying aggressively every month. I was doing like 5.6K every month. So I'll be pausing that for the next 2 months. I'll basically just be doing like the minimum and then a little bit more, just because, yeah, we just want to make room for these new expenses that came in from the trip. So yeah, just gotta balance things out. Can't be paying everything all at the same time. So it'll just be a 2-month pause on the HELOC payment, so it's not a big deal. And then I'll get back on track on that in November, December, probably, once those expenses from the trip come off. And yeah, that's the update this week. So yeah, definitely a lot to get through there. Yeah, one thing I was thinking about as well too, and right now this is just more in the thinking phases. As I was kind of seeing the dividends come in from like YMAX, BTCI, and MSTY and such this week, it got me thinking that I was like, part of me almost wants to kind of like potentially, this is all maybe, I'm just kind of mulling this over in my head, maybe potentially diversify out of these single stock ones and maybe just go towards the anchor ETFs as far as the income, just to help de-risk things a little bit. Like the whole strategy is very risky already. So maybe just kind of taking some risk off the table as far as like the single stock risk, especially on the high yield side. Maybe not so much on the growth anchor side, but at least on the high yield side, something I'm mulling over. Yeah, because if you look at the total returns, like if I were to sell, there would definitely be some losses there. But if you factor in the total return as far as like the total dividends that have been paid, I'd still be ahead for a lot of these. So it's like NVIDIA, for HUI, BTCI, MSTY less so. Like maybe that one I might maybe wait to just MSTR to have another run. But yeah, we'll see. I'm thinking about it. Not necessarily pulling the trigger on that, but I just kind of had that thought, so I want to be transparent about it this week. We'll see. Maybe that could also kind of help potentially even out the income of the portfolio and just kind of rebalance things a little bit. We'll see. Thinking about it, but not quite sure what I'll do with that yet, but just wanted to share. And then also as a fun little thing this week, I was thinking of sharing kind of like the finance video of the week that I've like enjoyed. Like obviously during the week, I just watch a bunch of finance videos, but one that I had fun listening to this week was actually an interview with Pay Me in Dividends and Eugen Vasquez. Yeah, definitely worth checking out on Pay Me in Dividends channel. And also there was one of Pay Me in Dividends on Eugen's channel. So both videos are worth checking out, but this one with Eugen was actually pretty fun to look at. So it was like, yeah, just also talking about finance, but also just personally, just his story and like how he was in Thailand, basically financially free as I understand it, because his portfolio is basically paying for his lifestyle there, which is pretty dope. But yeah, great interview, both mixed of like finance and personal stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out. Eugen has great stuff. He's definitely been a fan of his channel for the last several months since I discovered it. And like I mentioned in another video, I just mentioned it in text, but just to also mention it in video, like this one video here that he has in his strategies playlist, how to use margin to buy high yield ETFs, was kind of like the linchpin video that really made me understand margin maintenance the best, and like how to, and kind of seeing that nice core satellite approach that he had that I've mirrored, and also like that, yeah, I took inspiration from him and then also from Jake over at Dividend Growth Investing. But yeah, this was like key in terms of like really understanding margins. So definitely highly recommend you guys checking out this video. But yeah, that's it for this week. Yeah, as far as the usual. So yeah, if you check out my video descriptions, you'll have links to my Blossom social profile. That's a great one to follow me at, that I've been liking posting on. You can kind of see all my trades come through there. For example, like VU this week, I got rental income, so I invested that in VU. So you can kind of see all my trades and any thinking there. And then there's also a link to my public version of my Snowball Analytics portfolio. So everything that I was showing you back here, this is all shared publicly for free. And you see all the stats, all the breakdowns of everything, of like all my total profit for everything. Those pies that I was showing you. Yeah, you see all my dividends, all my growth, my transactions, income. So yeah, super transparent. Love being transparent with everybody on all that. So yeah, give that a check. And that's it. I'll catch you in the next video. So there should be one hopefully Wednesday next week. Like I said, that'll be the next episode of the 100% Paycheck Investing series. So you'll see me invest my full paycheck, just the thinking between what I invest in on the growth side that week, and then also the high yield side. And yeah, and then you'll also see me pay bills. Super fun, right? So yeah, I'm going to continue that series, and it'll just be kind of cool to see this whole strategy in practice, really, right? So it's nice talking about it in theory every week as a recap for any new users, but kind of just seeing it in practice, I think really helps, and just to really crystallize things. So if you got some value out of this and you're excited to follow future portfolio updates, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.